Tension over RV homeless encampments in Soto. That's south of the Dome in Seattle. It's ahead of this week's All-Star game. We got Major League Baseball All-Star weekend here in Seattle. Now, if you've ever been to a baseball game in Seattle, or a football game or a soccer game, anywhere in that area, it can be a little tricky. There's some tents. Got to be honest. And the further south of those domes that you go, it used to be the Kingdom. Now we just got these two massive stadiums, right? Anywhere south of those stadiums is, it could be a little sketch. Probably don't want to go there at night. I'll go there and park. That used to be my favorite place to park because it's free and just walk north. But now if I go to a game, I don't want to get my car broken into, right? So I'll either take an Uber or, park somewhere further north in a secured garage, as secured as a garage is. What do we got going on? This point of this story is there's a revolt by the RV owners, and they are all night before the All-Star game. They're all going to meet and just park their RVs right by the stadium in revolt in response to being kicked out of the Soto area. Yeah. Is that going to happen? Let's get into it. Let's see what craziness do we have going on in Seattle? Here we go. Shenanigans in Seattle. That's what we've got. With 1 week to go into the All-Star game in Seattle, people in RV encampments are preparing to move their belongings from the Soto neighborhood after notices were posted advising them to leave. The neighborhood has ongoing issues with crime, drug dealing, and waste from RV encampments. This area, it has always been kind of that industrial, grungy, if you're down on your luck, you go to this neighborhood, the Soto neighborhood. It's just got that tough vibe, right? I mean, it's tough from the standpoint of this is where zoning has allowed businesses that, deal with a lot of toxic stuff. I mean, it doesn't always smell great down there. It's because they're doing stuff. They're making stuff. They're fixing stuff. They're creating stuff. And I don't know if you know this, but that doesn't always smell like, the flower shop at the mall. So this is also an area where a lot of homeless folks live, and particularly a lot of RVs that may or may not run. They're telling us we need to be out of here by Wednesday morning, said Neil, a man who lives in an RV on Utah Avenue south of the T-Mobile Park. I have no idea where I'm going to go to as far as my gas tank will take me. All right. Well, hey, you know what about that one paragraph? The good thing is, as far as my gas tank will go, that means at least his RV runs, right? His RV runs, which is unlike so many of them. They don't go anywhere. Neil shared a flyer with Como News he said was given by someone who came to the RV encampments in the area, encouraging campers to move their RVs close to the stadium next Tuesday at midnight, right before the All-Star game. I'm sure that'll work out fine for them. I am sure Seattle Department of Transportation won't scoop in and haul all those RVs out. Nah, that wouldn't happen. An All-Star game, would it? Yes, that's exactly what would happen. They would be out of there by 2:00? It would just be game time go. No, so this group does not have a chance in hell of pulling that off. If they do, I will go down there because that would be funny to see. But yeah, so every city, when they have some kind of big event like this, they clean it up. Oh God, the whole world's going to be watching this. We don't want to see a bunch of RVs in Seattle. We need to clean up the riffraff. We need to clean that up. Let's make Seattle, the Emerald City, right? Let's make it just as pretty as ever. All right. And then the RV people are like, nah, F you guys. We're going to drive our RVs right by the stadium, midnight Tuesday. They've been pushing us around for months, hoping to clear us out of sight for the Major League Baseball All-Star game on July 11th. Well, it's actually July 7th through the 11th. That is the official dates. I looked it up. I do a lot of research. Let's make sure their work was for nothing, the flyer reads. So if you want to look at Jeremy Harris from Como, he's got the video on this. There's literally a flyer let's make sure their work was for nothing. Cause that really shows everybody that you guys living illegally in your RVs on Seattle streets. I mean, you guys are really got it going on there. The flyer says a support team will help people in RVs move their belongings and then have a party on July 11th. When the tailgaters and Rich something or other show up for I believe it probably started with the F-bomb, and Rich whatever show up for the big game, they're going to find exactly what the city worked so hard to prevent. Us, the flyer states. All right. So you got some shenanigans in Seattle, right? I drove by on my jet ski, the Sleepless in Seattle houseboat the other day. It's kind of just across the bay from where I've got my boat and my jet skis. And yeah, it's there. It's like, Sleepless in Seattle. You know, I have never seen that movie. I just could care less. I also never saw You've Got Mail. I could care less about that. However, I have seen Apocalypse Now and Apocalypse Now Redux probably 30 times, 20, 30 times, something like that. So that should tell you. Seen this one a lot. These two, not so much. Sleepless in Seattle, who cares? But I know chicks dig it, but I was married during that. So I was like, okay, yeah, you watch it and you give me the cliff notes, right? Neil said he's not sure if he'll participate. Neil, I would say don't, because that's just not going to work out well in your favor. Everybody is just waiting until tomorrow. What are they going to do? What are we going to do? He said. Seattle hasn't hosted an all-star game since 2001, and plans for the event have now been in the works for years. Years. And it's just like what we have down in LA. We had, what was that recently? Oh, there's something pretty major. I can't, was it another all-star game where they just went through and cleaned everything up? Do you remember that? It was like 6 months ago. It's like, oh, hey, we're really getting things cleaned up here. And, and it almost comes right back. Cause you can't, the whole thing is you could sweep them under the rug, but they're just going to crawl back out. They're just going to crawl right back out and do their thing. Just, this is what's going on. I was over for 4th of July. I was over in Seattle and I was checking out Seattle's biggest fireworks show is across the bay from where my boat is. And, so I wanted to kind of see what was going on. And I had a bunch of interaction there. They had hauled out most of the RVs and a lot of that area is cleaned up for 4th of July. We don't want the city to look bad. We need to clean up these areas that are going to get a lot of traffic. Now, I did go by the entrance to Gasworks Park in Seattle. And one of my thoughts was it's hard to tell Seattle regular people from homeless people. It really is. That was one of my observations was I don't really, what are all these people doing? Okay. We've got a big 4th of July event going on. Are these people waiting for or are these just homeless people? I don't really, it's what you get for living in Seattle, right? Yeah. In June, 450 people turned up for a city day of service to clean up the area near the stadiums. Yes, they did. And you know what they came up with? They came up with a dead dude in one of the tents right by the entrance to one of the stadiums. So meanwhile, while the city of Seattle is trying to bring in all these tourism dollars, the All-Star game planned years prior. Now it's down to go time. And these folks in RVs are like, let's really stick them. Let's just drive all our RVs. I mean, how many RVs actually run out of these RVs that are down there? How many of them run? A couple dozen, maybe. And you guys are all going to somehow get together, not be on drugs at that point in time, and then drive to the stadium. I mean, how's that going to go? I find it ludicrous. And yet at the same time, totally expected. This is Seattle. It's Freeattle. Do whatever you want. It's fun. Except for when there's big tourism dollars coming in and, we got to clean this action up. Yeah. So it was on one of those big cleanup days. Hey, we got to get ahead of this old, tent stuff. We need to clean that up. Where Andrea Suarez she went to a tent and she sent me a couple of pictures and they were just hardcore because some guy was found dead in his tent. This was, I think in June. I think it was in June, maybe a month before that, but they've been cleaning up downtown for a long time, especially Soto. Just kind of going for it. And summer season here in Seattle, I don't know, but we actually do have a summer season here in Seattle, but it's very short. Like it's literally July 5th. So I'm recording this for you on July 6th. Our summer weather is here. It happened on July 4th this year. Praise be. It's a miracle. Miracles do happen because usually the 4th of July is kind of crappy weather. And because we have crappy weather until July 5th, invariably. So we try and, pack everything in the tourism season, the millions of people that come as tourists to our waterfront area in downtown Seattle, they try and clean all that up. We need to make it look good because only a couple of blocks away from that, I mean, literally a couple of blocks away. All right. So here's general layout of Seattle. All right. So you've got, here's the pier waterfront area. This is where all your tour ships take off from. Okay. Couple of blocks up, you've got the Pike Place Market, and then literally right down in 3rd and Pike Pine. So here's the Pike Place Market, and literally here's 3rd and Pine and Pike right here. So you are literally a couple of blocks away from the Blade at an entrance-exit point. For millions of people, of tourists coming to Seattle. Now, a lot of the tourists, they're taking boats up to Alaska because that's a massive component of our, tourism. And so we've got that going on. So we've got these little spots that get all cleaned up. The Blade, yeah, it's not getting cleaned up. Soto, it's getting a little bit cleaned up for the All-Star game, but to the point where the folks in the RVs are frustrated and they're organizing this little mini revolt, which will go nowhere. Guaranteed. This will go nowhere because these guys, the fact that somebody was actually able to get together a flyer, I am fairly impressed. I mean, that's some strong work on their behalf, but every city undergoes this when you've got a big showcase coming on, right? Big showcase. Seattle is no exception. So will this be a big thing? No, this won't. But what you've got is how much of this will show through, how much of this will show through with the tents, how much of this will show through the Blade, how much of this show will show through in any of the downtown areas that are just going to be hit with a whole bunch of tourists, a whole bunch of people coming in to watch the baseball game. Now, to me, I think it gets diluted. I think not diluted, diluted from the standpoint, okay, you got XYZ number of homeless folks. And then you've got however many thousands of people come into town, hundreds of thousands. I don't know for the All-Star game. How many people can the stadium fit? 60,000. Then you've got all the support. You've got all the people coming in and there's multiple days of it, right? So it's a massive, massive boon to the local economy. So we do our best to just, hey, let's clean things up. I mean, this doesn't make us look good and we need to look good. Now, Mayor Harrell, in defense of him and his actions, he has been an on the sweeps kind of guy to the point where people are just, what is that guy Republican or what? What is up with that mayor? He is constantly sweeping. And that's been great because I think a lot of the areas have improved. They're not perfect and they're never going to be perfect because sweeps won't end this. It just moves it around a little bit, right? My kid, I always want to say one of my kids, but since my youngest kid is no longer with us, it's like, terrible. It's one of those little mini reminders. Hey, your son is no longer alive. It's horrible, but kind of getting used to that whole thing. But, my oldest son sent me a text and he said, Ballard's terrible. Ballard is an area to the north. And I think, it's a residential community just to the north of downtown Seattle. And Ballard has taken a lot of the influx of people being pushed out of downtown Seattle. Let's just take a look at the little mappy map. Okay. So here's your downtown. All right. Here's your downtown. Here's Ballard. So people have been pushed from here to here. And they're also all throughout here. They're all over. They're not over here because this is all pretty much residential. And unless they're on the outskirts of this area, Queen Anne, not as much. Over here, yes. Over here, some, yes. But for the most part, they get pushed south and they get pushed north and up into Ballard, because Ballard's a pretty big area for homeless encampments. So there's a pattern to all of this. But now the folks in Soto are feeling the squeeze because the city has said, no, you got to go. Otherwise, we're going to haul you out. So how many RVs are they going to haul out between now and the actual All-Star game, which is Tuesday the 11th, I believe, July the 11th? It'll be interesting to see. Almost guarantee you, City of Seattle does this massive push right at the end, get things all swept up. And then, right after the game, it's going to go right back. I mean, it's just going to fall apart. Because you can't, these folks didn't go away and they're not in shelters. These are people on drugs. I mean, it's pretty clear. It's pretty evident to see what kind of lifestyles they're living. And they're not going to church on Sunday, and they're not taking their vitamins. Let's just put it that way, right? So you've got one of these things where it's like, okay, that's pretty normal. But what wasn't normal is for that flyer to get made, right? Let's revolt. Let's really take it for those rich who worked really hard, made something of themselves, put together a little bit of money, put together whatever in their lives that they earned. When they come to town, we're going to show them with our crappy RVs that may or may not run. We're really going to stick it to the man. City of Seattle Department of Transportation's like, yep, don't care. We're hauling your rig out of here. Off to the wherever we take them. I know in Seattle, they end up, the RVs end up in a parking lot by one of the towing companies, Lincoln Towing, I believe. And because I get this question all the time, where do the RVs go? There's a massive, well, let me show you again. It's up, I think, in the Northgate area. So Northgate right here. There's a towing yard up there. And that's where they all end up. And you know what's crazy is that people are breaking in to that towing yard because they know there's probably some leftover drugs in there, or whatever. The probability of having a little bit of drugs stuck somewhere, and if you've got an entrance into the towing yard, which they're cutting, they're cutting the metal chain link fence to get in there. On the regular. I've seen video of this. I mean, it's just a whole disaster thing. But these folks don't go away. These drug addicts don't go away. These owners of these RVs have come to Seattle. Most of them are not from Seattle. That whole narrative of, well, they're just poor people down on their luck. Now that's total nonsense. Total nonsense. Just like down in San Francisco, when you had 45 arrests. Because Mayor Breed's going ham on trying to get word out that fentanyl, open use fentanyl is no longer tolerated. Of the 45 people that were arrested for open air drug use, 3 of them were from San Francisco. 3 of them. I mean, it's insane to me, but that's what we've got going on in Seattle as well. These folks are not from Seattle. I see them all the time. These are not Seattle people. These are, they're drug tourists, right? Hey, let's go up to Vancouver, BC. Let's see if we can get across the border and we'll go into Vancouver and see what's going on there. Cause I hear the drugs are cheap and good there too. Come to Seattle, go to Portland. Hey, Portland not working for you? Go down to San Fran. San Fran not working for you? Go to LA. I mean, you've got the whole West Coast as your oyster, right? Except when it's All-Star weekend. And then we polish the turd. We really do. Get that Soto neighborhood under control. Good Lord. Have you seen the RVs there? And I've seen the RVs. Yeah. And it's not great, but it's also kind of just the Soto area, unless it's the All-Star weekend. And then, I mean, we're just going to go ham and we're going to clean it up. No, a lot of Seattle has been cleaned up, but then you've got these areas like the Soto area, the International District, the Blade that I talked about, where it's just like, you're never going to clean those up. I don't know what it's going to take. An army, the National Guard, to clean those up. So what they do is they do the best that they can for the Major League Baseball All-Star Weekend. I will not be attending. I just don't really care about baseball. I'm sorry to all of you folks who are just in love with Major League Baseball. I'm just not. I I think it's kind of boring. I think it's a boring sport. I think it's a boring game. Both my kids played baseball. I sat through, I couldn't tell you how many baseball games in my day as a parent. Some of them good, some of them not so good. If you've been a parent of baseball, how about if your kid, when he was 16, 17, 18, made the traveling squad or whatever it was? That was not a cheap little deal. And you had to go to, how many games per weekend. And sometimes for us, they were up in Canada sometimes, or sometimes way Eastern Washington. But as far as me attending, I don't think so. And neither will the campers with their RVs. But a lot of other people are going to come into Seattle and go, hey, it's pretty clean here. I'm not seeing a lot of that. And dilution, I think, is the key. You bring 1 million people into the city for around, a sporting event or whatever it is. It doesn't seem like we have that many homeless. It's when the pandemic emptied the downtown core out, it seemed like the only people there were the homeless, right? And I remember walking those streets in like January, February of 2021. I think it was 2020. It might have been 2020. And man, they were the only people down there, the homeless people. There's nobody working in the high rises. So now we're trying to bring things back. We've got a Major League Baseball team, all-star weekend going on. We'll just have to see how it goes. But I'm hoping, for the sake of news for reasonable people, I'm hoping that they revolt and they make a big deal out of it. I'm hoping they're able to get their act together. Because that'd be a great story. Look what happened to Seattle. I'd love it. I don't know. We'll see. Probably nothing will happen because, a bunch of drug addicts, the best that they can do is get together a flyer. That's my opinion. But good story from Jeremy Harris of Como on just shenanigans going on in Seattle. And, why wouldn't we have this? It's All-Star Weekend. All right. Thanks so much for being here. Thanks so much for supporting News for Reasonable People. I will catch up with you on the next one. Bye for now.